In the streets of Caracas, a quiet tension hangs in the air. Shops remain closed, power lines hum over empty roads, and the city seems to breathe slowly. For decades, Venezuela has lived between promises and shortages, hope and despair. Behind the speeches and parades, one question refuses to disappear. How did power become so concentrated in the hands of a single family? Tonight, we follow the story of Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, a story of power, loyalty, and allegations that reach far beyond Venezuela's borders. The story starts not in a palace, but on the bustling streets of the capital. Nicolás Maduro was not born into privilege. He started as a bus driver, navigating Caracas, listening to the struggles of ordinary citizens. This was a man who understood the rhythm of the city, the language of the working class. He rose through the ranks of labor unions, his voice gaining strength and prominence, eventually catching the ear of a charismatic leader who would change Venezuela forever, Hugo Chávez. Maduro became a key figure in Chávez's political movement, his presence resonating with a generation that craved change. He stood by Chávez's side, learning, observing, and growing into a political force. When Chávez passed away in 2013, Maduro stepped into his shoes, assuming the presidency. But he inherited more than just a nation. He inherited a fragile political system, a deeply divided society, and a country teetering on the edge of economic collapse. The man from the streets was now in the highest seat of power, facing a storm that had been brewing for years. But this isn't just Maduro's story. Alongside him, and sometimes, critics say, ahead of him, was Cilia Flores. She was never just a first lady. A sharp lawyer and a seasoned legislator, Flores was one of Chávez's closest and most trusted allies long before Maduro took the presidency. She was a central figure in her own right, holding powerful positions like President of the National Assembly and Attorney General. To supporters, she was a brilliant strategist, the wise counsel behind key decisions. To her critics, however, she was the real power behind the presidency, an unseen hand guiding the state. Her influence, they argued, extended far beyond what the public could see. Together, Nicolás and Cilia became an inseparable political force. Their personal and political lives entwined so tightly it became impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. They presented a united front, a power couple at the helm of a nation in crisis. As Maduro's presidency progressed, observers both inside and outside Venezuela began to notice a troubling pattern. The lines between state and family started to blur. Relatives of Cilia Flores began appearing in important government roles. One after another, appointments were made that seemed to favor family ties over qualifications, and allegations of nepotism quickly followed. Their son, Nicolás Maduro Guerra, affectionately known as Nicolásito, was given senior government positions, including a seat in the controversial National Constituent Assembly. This fueled widespread criticism that power was becoming a family affair. The government consistently denied any wrongdoing, framing the appointments as merit-based. Yet, the allegations persisted, cementing the public perception of a ruling family entrenching its authority, turning state institutions into a family enterprise. The personal had become political, and the political had become deeply personal. The controversy didn't stop at the borders of Venezuela. It exploded onto the international stage in 2015 when two of Cilia Flores' nephews were arrested in Haiti. Francisco Flores de Freitas and Efrain Antonio Campo Flores were charged by U.S. authorities with conspiring to traffic hundreds of kilograms of cocaine into the United States. The case, which became known as the Narco-Sobrinos affair, sent shockwaves through the political world. During the trial, the nephews allegedly claimed they needed the money to help their family stay in power. They were convicted and sentenced to 18 years in a U.S. prison. The Venezuelan government called the case a politically motivated kidnapping, an attempt by the U.S. to destabilize the country. But for critics, it was undeniable proof of corruption at the highest levels, linking the ruling family to criminal networks. The scandal added a dark and serious new dimension to the accusations swirling around the presidential palace. With each passing year, the economic situation in Venezuela spiraled further downward. Hyperinflation made the currency virtually worthless. Food and medicine became scarce, forcing millions to flee the country in one of the largest migration crises in modern history. The government blamed the crisis on an economic war waged by the United States and its allies, citing crippling sanctions that choked the nation's oil industry. They maintained they were victims of foreign aggression. On the other hand, critics and many international economists pointed to years of economic mismanagement, corruption, and the destruction of private industry as the root causes. They argued that the government's policies, long before the toughest sanctions were imposed, had dismantled the country's productive capacity, leaving it completely dependent on oil revenue that was now out of reach. The blame game intensified, but for the people on the ground, the reality was simple: hunger, desperation, and a future that looked increasingly bleak. As the country crumbled, the political landscape grew more polarized. In 2019, the opposition-led National Assembly declared Maduro's presidency illegitimate, citing claims of a fraudulent election. The head of the assembly, Juan Guaido, declared himself interim president, and he was quickly recognized by over 50 countries, including the United States. This move split the world. Russia, China, and Cuba stood firmly by Maduro, denouncing the move as a coup attempt. For a time, Venezuela had men claiming to be its rightful leader. Guaido's movement sparked massive street protests, but it ultimately failed to dislodge Maduro from power. The military, a crucial pillar of support, remained loyal to him. Maduro's grip, though tested, held firm. He consolidated his power, cracking down on dissent and further sidelining the opposition. The brief hope for a swift political transition faded, leaving the country locked in a prolonged stalemate. Today, Nicolás Maduro and Cilia Flores remain in Miraflores Palace. Their power, forged in the streets and solidified through years of political maneuvering, appears absolute. They have weathered international pressure, economic collapse, and internal challenges. But the questions that have followed them throughout their reign persist. Is this a story of revolutionary survival against a hostile empire, or is it a tale of a family that captured a state, sacrificing a nation's well-being for its own power? The truth, as is often the case, is likely buried somewhere in the middle, obscured by propaganda, political interests, and the very real suffering of millions. The streets of Caracas are still quiet, but they are listening, waiting. The story of Venezuela is far from over, and its future remains unwritten. What comes next for this nation, and for the couple at its center, is a question the entire world is watching. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you found this documentary insightful, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more deep dives, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story. We appreciate your support. Meanwhile, Venezuela's economy was spiraling out of control. Hyperinflation skyrocketed, making the currency practically worthless overnight. Supermarket shelves, once full, were now eerily empty. Finding basic necessities like flour, milk, or even toilet paper became a daily, exhausting challenge. Images of long lines for food and medicine became the new normal. Faced with this desperate reality, millions of Venezuelans made the heart-wrenching decision to leave their homes, their families, and everything they knew, fleeing the country in search of survival. The reasons for this collapse are fiercely debated. Supporters of the government pointed the finger at international sanctions and what they called an economic war waged by foreign powers. They argued that outside interference was deliberately crippling the nation. On the other hand, critics laid the blame squarely on years of corruption, economic mismanagement, and flawed policies. For ordinary Venezuelans caught in the middle, the cause was less important than the effect. Daily life became an unrelenting struggle for survival. The future was uncertain, and the gap between the government's rhetoric and the people's reality grew wider with each passing day. Then, in 2015, a scandal erupted that brought international attention to a new level. Two nephews of Cilia Flores were arrested in Haiti on drug trafficking charges and handed over to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. U.S. authorities alleged they were attempting to transport hundreds of kilograms of cocaine into the United States. The news sent shockwaves through Venezuela and across the globe. Courtroom sketches and dramatic headlines dominated the news cycle. The Venezuelan government immediately denounced the arrests, calling them a politically motivated kidnapping and a setup designed to destabilize the administration. Critics, however, saw it as damning evidence, suggesting that the highest levels of power might be entangled with international criminal networks. The case became a flashpoint, intensifying international scrutiny and adding another complex layer to Venezuela's ongoing crisis. Over the next decade, U.S. authorities escalated their accusations, turning up the heat on Venezuela's leadership. Senior officials, right up to Nicolás Maduro himself, were publicly linked to alleged narcotics operations. Indictments were unsealed, painting a picture of a government deeply entangled with the drug trade. The claims were serious, that Maduro and his inner circle were not just turning a blind eye, but actively facilitating massive drug shipments and collaborating with violent criminal groups. In response, Maduro and Cilia Flores publicly and forcefully rejected every single charge. They framed the accusations as nothing more than political warfare, a desperate attempt by Washington to destabilize their government. But the legal actions were undeniably significant. It marked an unprecedented moment in modern history. It is exceptionally rare for a sitting head of state to face international criminal allegations of this magnitude while still in power, creating a standoff with global implications. As the legal battles raged, the economic war intensified. Sanctions tightened their grip, specifically targeting the lifeblood of Venezuela's economy, its vital oil industry. PDVSA, the state-owned oil giant, was hit hard. Foreign assets were frozen, and international companies were barred from doing business with them. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Oil tankers sat idle in ports, refineries fell into disrepair and closed, and the flow of petrodollars that had propped up the country for decades dwindled to a trickle. Government revenue shrank dramatically, and the already struggling economy went into a freefall. The bolivar became nearly worthless due to hyperinflation. While the sanctions were aimed at the government, ordinary citizens bore the brunt of the restrictions. The shelves in supermarkets were often empty, and people struggled for basic necessities like food, medicine, and clean water. Long lines for gasoline became a daily reality. At the center of this storm, Maduro and Flores remained firmly in power, projecting an image of resilience against foreign aggression. But their survival raised difficult questions that echoed around the world. Were the sanctions effectively punishing a corrupt and authoritarian government, or were they collectively punishing the 30 million people of Venezuela? The lines between governance and survival blurred entirely. For millions, life became a daily struggle against hunger, preventable illness, and a collapsing infrastructure. This desperation fueled one of the largest migration crises in the world, as millions of Venezuelans fled the country in search of a better life, creating a ripple effect across Latin America and beyond. The human cost of the political conflict was becoming tragically clear. Despite the economic collapse and international pressure, elections continued to be held under Maduro's rule. However, their legitimacy was fiercely questioned, both at home and abroad. Major opposition parties were systematically weakened, with many of their leaders jailed, exiled, or barred from running for office. This created an electoral landscape that many observers felt was heavily skewed in favor of the ruling party. As a result, protests frequently erupted across the country, with citizens demanding fair elections and a change in leadership. These demonstrations were often met with a heavy-handed response from riot police and security forces. Confidence in the electoral system eroded completely. Amid widespread claims of fraud and voter manipulation from domestic and international critics, power remained concentrated in the hands of the executive branch. Paradoxically, the external pressure and internal turmoil seemed to only strengthen the ruling couple's grip on power. They consolidated control over key institutions, including the military, the judiciary, and the National Election Council. Venezuela transformed into a nation where political survival was increasingly defined by loyalty to the government and a pervasive sense of fear. Dissenting voices were often silenced, whether through intimidation, arrest, or censorship of the media. The political landscape became a zero-sum game, where compromise was seen as weakness and opposition was treated as treason. This cycle of contested elections, protests, and repression trapped the country in a state of perpetual crisis with no clear path forward. The democratic institutions that were once a source of national pride were now at the heart of its deepest divisions. Through every crisis, one constant remained: Nicolás Maduro and Cilia Flores, side by side. To supporters, they are defenders of sovereignty and champions of the Bolivarian Revolution. To critics, they are the face of a system resistant to change, a family intertwined with the fate of a nation in turmoil. Their partnership is as much political as personal, a living embodiment of Venezuela's contradictions. Truth is never simple, and power decides which stories endure. In Venezuela, history is written not only by events, but by those who survived them. Allegations of corruption, nepotism, and drug trafficking have shadowed the couple for years. Legal battles, sanctions, and international condemnation have followed them across borders. Yet the country continues to wrestle with its identity and future under their leadership. Is this a story of foreign interference, or is it a story of unchecked power at home? For Venezuela, the answer is still unfolding. The consequences of their choices, the allegations against them, and the resilience of the people will shape the country for generations. One thing is certain, the story of Nicolás Maduro and Cilia Flores is far from over, and its reverberations will be felt long after this moment in history. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. If you found this content insightful, please remember to subscribe, like, and share.